quite sad to start a new story about Ruby with her getting into trouble right away, but I have to tell you about it. If Ruby hadn't done this naughty thing, this story wouldn't exist. Only Ruby could think of such a thing, and said when she found out. It seems like Ruby always thinks of naughty things to do. Ruby has been having a lot of mischievous moments lately, as Nora calls them. Maybe it's because Ruby has been left alone more than ever before. Mommy is sick, so Ruby can only go into her room when she's very quiet and careful not to disturb her. Mommy doesn't know much about what Ruby does all day because she spends most of her time playing. All summer, Ruby has been running around freely, only coming inside to eat or chat with Mommy in the evening. But Ruby rarely tells Mommy about the things she does that Mommy wouldn't like. When Ruby visits Ruthie at Mrs. Warren's house, Mrs. Warren tries to make Ruby behave like her own daughter. But it's hard to control Ruby, who is impulsive and quick-tempered. Mrs. Warren often sighs, thinking how upset Ruby's mommy would be if she knew how naughty Ruby was without her around. Ruby's dad is busy with his patients. When he's home, he spends most of his time with Mommy in her room, so he doesn't know how much Ruby needs someone to watch over her and keep her out of trouble. Anne tried her best to look after Ruby, but she had a lot more work than usual. She didn't have much time to keep an eye on Ruby. Plus, Ruby didn't listen to Anne unless Anne threatened to tell Dr. Harper if Ruby misbehaved, and didn't like to complain about Ruby if she could avoid it. So, Ruby had a good chance to be as naughty as she wanted. Every day, it seemed like she thought of more mischievous things to do than ever before. Ruby was having a nice time by herself this afternoon. It would have been nicer to have Ruthie with her, but Mrs. Warren didn't want Ruthie to go to Mrs. Harper's house anymore. Ruthie could be trusted to not get into trouble alone, but sometimes she joined Ruby's mischief when Ruby persuaded her. Some workers had been building a new henhouse near the stable, and Ruby used the leftover boards to make a playhouse. With Anne's help, she leaned the boards against an old tree branch to make a tent-shaped house. She thought it was great fun to play there. Ruby's favorite story was the Swiss Family Robinson. She thought it would be wonderful to be stranded on a desert island. Since she didn't see any chance of that happening, she decided to live in her little house instead of going home, except to see her mother. She was sure her family wouldn't approve of this plan, so she didn't tell them. She wanted to try it out without being told not to. One day, when she knew and was busy with her mother, Ruby went to the attic and brought down blankets and a pillow. She took them to her little house in the yard and hid them. Just as she finished hiding them, she heard her father's buggy arriving. She was afraid he would see what she had taken and not approve of her plan to spend the night in her playhouse alone. So, she quickly went to greet him, held his hand and walked with him to the house. Then she hurried back to her play. After dinner, when Nora wasn't in the kitchen, Ruby took some food to her little house. She wanted to pretend to be like the Swiss Family Robinson, so she brought biscuits and cookies, even though they're not what people usually eat when they're shipwrecked. She thought it was better to have them just in case there were no coconuts or breadfruit trees nearby. She filled her apron with the yummy cookies and had just made, along with some biscuits from the stone jar. Then she spotted a little pastry turnover she was sure Anne had made for her, so she added that to her collection. Ruby imagined her little house looked just like a tent on a desert island as she sat inside and looked around. Of course, real castaways wouldn't have such a cozy shelter or fresh cookies, but Ruby was happy with what she had. She thought spending the night alone there would be great fun. She closed her eyes and pretended to hear waves crashing and monkeys chattering in the trees. She wished Ruthie could join her. It would be much nicer to have company, but she realized it was probably for the best that Ruthie couldn't come. Ruthie might be scared to sleep outside and want to go back home just when things got interesting. Ruby wasn't scared at all. She thought sneaking out of the house after bedtime would be easy. She didn't know that her father always checked on her before he went to bed, and sometimes even earlier in the evening. Ruby knew she was going to do something naughty, but she didn't let that stop her. She was too used to getting her own way. She was so excited about her plan for the night that she was unusually quiet for the rest of the afternoon, and noticed and got suspicious. "You're planning some mischief, Ruby Harper," Anne said. "I know you too well. Just behave and don't worry your poor mom." "I won't tell you," Ruby replied cheekily. Just then Anne realized her cookies were missing. "Where are my cookies?" she asked. "I know you didn't eat them all. Go get them right now." Ruby made a face and ran away. She wasn't going to return the cookies or say where they were. She needed them for her desert island adventure. She knew she couldn't tell Nora about her plan, so she ran over to Ruthie's house. She found Ruthie playing with her paper dolls on the porch. For a few minutes, she pretended she had come to see Ruthie's dolls. "I have a plan to share with you, Ruthie," she said. "But I don't want anyone else to hear us, so let's go sit under the apple tree with the dolls." Ruthie gathered her dolls, and soon they were sitting together on the low bench Ruthie's dad had put there for them. "It's the best plan," Ruby started. "Can I join in?" asked Ruthie, sounding a bit hopeful and nervous. She always liked being part of Ruby's plans, but sometimes they were so strange that she didn't enjoy them. "Well, you could, but it might be hard," Ruby answered, a bit confused. "Why not?" Ruthie asked. "I'll explain, and then you'll understand," Ruby replied. "But first, you have to promise not to tell anyone about it, not even your mom." "Not even my mom?" Ruthie asked, feeling better when she told her mom everything. "No, not a soul," Ruby said. "I won't tell you unless you promise. You'll be sorry if I don't tell you because it's the best plan ever. It's like a storybook." Ruthie's curiosity won over her doubts about keeping secrets. "Okay, I promise not to tell anyone," she said seriously. "Tell me." "Promise on your heart," Ruby insisted, as they had a habit of thinking it made promises stronger. "I promise on my heart," Ruthie said firmly. Then they leaned in close together while Ruby whispered her amazing secret. No one could hear them, not even the birds in their nests up in the tree, if they had spoken aloud. But secrets felt more mysterious when whispered, so Ruby rarely spoke them aloud. "I'm going to pretend I'm stranded on a desert island," she whispered, and Ruthie's eyes widened. "But how? There's no desert island nearby for miles," Ruthie said, surprised. "Oh, you don't get it," Ruby said impatiently. "I mean I'll pretend. Down by the barn will be our desert island, and my little house made of boards will be my hut. I'm going to sleep there alone tonight, and I've got supplies ready. But will you stay out there alone when it's dark?" Ruthie asked, feeling relieved she wasn't part of this plan. She knew she wouldn't dare to do it, no matter how much Ruby wanted her to join.